Okay, welcome everybody back to Jay's Retro Toys and Games. I'm your host Jason DeCanio, and it's time for another episode. Well, long before photorealistic graphics and ray-traced shadows made video games look exactly like the boring reality we are trying to escape, there was a time when the ultimate winter sports simulation consisted of a blue triangle sliding down a field of aggressive static. The year was 1980. The console was the Atari 2600, a wood-paneled monolith that smelled faintly of warm dust and parental regret. Well, at Jay's Retro Toys and Games, we remember the sacred ritual of blowing into plastic cartridges like desperate CPR, hoping to revive a world made entirely of geometric shapes. Activision, a ragtag group of rebel programmers who broke away from Atari because they wanted actual credit for their labor, decided their next masterpiece would tackle the harrowing, adrenaline-fueled world of alpine sports. They called it simply skiing. It didn't have a career mode, it didn't have sponsored endorsements, or it certainly didn't have physics. What it did have was a relentless, soul-crushing difficulty that turned innocent suburban children into hardened joystick-breaking cynics. That's what we're looking at on today's episode, number 135 of Jay's Retro Toys and Games. It's skiing coming up next. Welcome all of you back to Jay's Retro Toys and Games here on the All TV channel on YouTube. Boy, oh boy, we're having a fantastic 5th anniversary here. The summer is getting hotter, and it is Tuesday, June 30th, 2026. This is the last June episode you will ever see in the 5th season, because when we come back on Thursday, we'll be here on July 2nd, 2 days before the 4th of July and the big 250th birthday of our country. Well, wouldn't you know it, we're talking about, of course, the Activision series of games here, specifically from 1980 to 89. This is the only series that's going to go back there. There's more Activision games made after 89, but we're primarily focusing on these early ones because this was the glue that kept the Atari going. I mean, there's only so much you can play of the Atari 2600 games themselves, but when you incorporate this Activision company and its slew of games, you've got variety that'll keep everybody entertained. And that's what the whole thing is all about. Entertainment in retro toys and games, and we have it right now in skiing. Yeah. To understand the technical marvel that was skiing, one must first understand the artistic restraint of designer Bob Whitehead. In 1980, rendering a human being with 2 distinct legs on the Atari 2600 was considered an act of witchcraft. Whitehead looked at the system's limitations and made a bold, stylistic choice. The skier would be a bright blue silhouette that looked less like an athlete and more like a stray cursor from an early Microsoft Excel spreadsheet. This blue protagonist possessed ankles forged from titanium and a spine that refused to bend, standing in a permanent, rigid crouch. The snow was represented by a blinding white background that put maximum strain on cathode ray tube televisions across America, creating a localized glare that could burn a permanent rectangular shape into a child's retinas. It was beautiful in its minimalism, a digital haiku of speed and geometry, where players were asked to pretend that 3 blue pixels were a daring winter athlete conquering the Swiss Alps, of course. Once you hit reset on the console, the illusion of motion began. The game utilized a revolutionary technical trick where the skier remained entirely stationary in the center of the screen while the entire mountain was violently pulled upward by an invisible, omnipotent force. The slopes were populated by two distinct entities, red flags and green pine trees. Now, the red flags form the gates for the slalom mode, requiring surgical precision to pass through, and while the pine trees served as static instruments of pure malice. These were not the soft, welcoming pine trees of a Bob Ross painting. These were jagged, pixelated sentinels of doom, designed with the sole purpose of halting your momentum and shattering your dreams. Navigating this landscape required an intimate understanding of the Atari joystick, a controller famous for having the ergonomic comfort of a brick and the responsiveness of a waterlogged sponge. But the true magic of skiing wasn't found in the silicon chips or the plastic casing. It was forged on the living room floors of our youth during family gatherings. Our host, myself, Jason DeCanio, remembers these days vividly, sitting once again on the carpet at his aunt and uncle's house, surrounded by the smell of family dinner and the soft hum of the heavy box television. Jason recalls the room erupting into sheer chaos as the single sticky joystick was passed back and forth, everyone completely helpless with laughter every single time a sibling or cousin careened headfirst into a flagpole or smacked into a pixelated pine tree. The entire family would jeer as the digital timer ticked away, transforming a simple home visit into a high-stakes Olympic trial where everyone desperately tried to shave a millisecond off the family's best time. For me, it was a beautiful, noisy ecosystem of competitive friction where the agony of a terrible run was instantly cured by the sound of his uncle laughing so hard he spilled his drink on the upholstery. Now, in modern video games, when a character crashes, they tumble realistically down the mountain, and their limbs reacting to complex ragdoll physics while snow sprays majestically into the air. But in Activision skiing, a crash was a psychological trauma condensed into a single frame of animation. The moment your blue triangle brushed against the outermost pixel of a pine tree, the game instantly stripped away your dignity. The skier did not fall. He simply rotated 90 degrees, pointing his skis directly at the sky in a posture of complete and utter defeat. The joyful whirring sound of the wind was replaced by a tragic descending buzz that sounded like a dying lawnmower. You were forced to sit there staring at your upside-down avatar for a full 2 seconds, contemplating every poor life choice that brought you to this moment, before the mountain mercifully allowed you to upright yourself and continue your pathetic descent. Skiing offered two distinct gameplay modes: the slalom, which was a test of administrative accuracy, and the downhill, which was a pure, unadulterated race against the Grim Reaper. The game didn't feature computer-controlled opponents or online leaderboards. Your only enemy was a glowing red digital timer at the top of the screen that ticked upward with mocking efficiency. Every missed gate in the slalom mode tacked on a brutal penalty, turning a decent run into an embarrassing historical artifact. The pursuit of a new high score became an obsession that consumed entire weekends, driving siblings to physical warfare over who got the good joystick that didn't stick to the left. It was a masterclass in gameplay economy, proving that you didn't need a sprawling open world to captivate a generation. You just needed a timer that refused to show mercy. One of the greatest joys of the Atari era was the thick, beautifully illustrated instruction booklets that accompanied the cartridges, which were filled with elaborate backstories and artistic renderings that looked absolutely nothing like the actual game. The manual for skiing spoke of varying snow conditions, steep vertical drops, and the thrill of professional competition. It even detailed the different game variations, ranging from the gentle slopes of Game 1 to the suicidal velocity of Game 10. To an 8-year-old in a beanbag chair, changing the game select switch felt like tuning a high-performance sports car. even though the only actual mathematical difference was that the trees spawned closer together and the mountain moved upward at a speed that violated several laws of thermodynamics. It was a glorious era of imagination-fueled gaming where the software provided the skeleton and the player's brain provided the meat. For those elite players who managed to conquer the mountain and achieve a truly legendary time, Activision offered the ultimate validation, the Activision Flying Wedge patch. Now, if you could complete the downhill run under a specific time limit, you could take a physical photograph of your television screen using a Kodak camera, waiting a week for the drugstore to develop the film, and mailing the physical picture to California to receive a high-quality embroidered patch to sew onto your denim jacket. This was the birth of gaming achievements, a tangible symbol of playground dominance that instantly elevated you to the status of a local deity. Wearing that patch to school was proof that you had looked into the pixelated eyes of death on the slopes and lived to tell the tale, earning the eternal respect of everyone in the cafeteria. Well, today the cartridges of Activision's Skiing sit proudly on the shelves at Jay's Retro Toys and Games. Their colorful labels depicting stylized skiers carving through pristine powder under a brilliant sun, and they serve as a physical bridge to an era when gaming was defined not by gigabytes and season passes, but by pure, unfiltered gameplay loops. And while the graphics have aged like milk left in a warm station wagon, the frantic, heart-pounding joy of dodging a sudden pine tree remains entirely intact. It is a reminder of a time when Activision was the gold standard of console software, pushing a primitive black box to its absolute limits. So come on down to Jay's, grab a cartridge, blow the dust out of the bottom, and see if you still have what it takes to navigate the digital avalanche without turning your skier upside down. And that will do it for this edition of Jay's Retro Toys and Games for June 30th, 2026. Episode 135 is now officially come to a close. We hope you're enjoying this 5th anniversary summer edition of our show. When we wrap up the summertime in August and start in September, we will be in Season 6 and continuing our look of what to be. If we go through all of the Activision games, we'll, of course, get you into something else. We'll still continue our look at the NES accessories suggested by Susan Fit47. We haven't forgotten about you. We're taking a little bit of a break from that and decided to go a little bit of a different route. It's not a big thing, but we hope that you're enjoying a little bit of a different presentation during the summertime to kind of take a break, as they say. And remember, of course, friends, these scripts are meant to be funny. We have decided to put a little bit of a funny, nostalgic twist to our scripts, and of course, they're all AI. So we've added a little bit of what they call realistical things to our nostalgic script, but in the end, it's always fun to have something to go by and laugh at when we realize that we cannot control our skiing partner or player through 2 flagpoles, regardless of how fast they really are going. Till next time, which is Thursday, have a great night, and remember, keep on playing and keep on winning. Good night from all of us here at Jay's Retro Toys and Games.